Hi, and welcome to yet another video in AI and C# and some major news. Because as of today, October 1st, 2025, we finally have what is the replacement of semantic kernel, which was mentioned to be in maintenance mode a few months ago. And the new thing is called Microsoft Agent Framework. This is its new logo. And let's quickly look at the history and why we are here. So semantic kernel have been around since December 2025, and Microsoft Extensions AI, which is the lower level version of all this, have been since October 2024. And the reason why I mention Extensions AI is because it has all of these have dependencies on this low level part, but for the real agents, it is semantic kernel and now agent framework that you need to use. So this began back in May of 2025, where the merger happened with the Autogen team and the mention of semantic kernel going into maintenance mode and the new framework being mentioned. And now, 1st of October, we have the new name, Microsoft Agentic Framework, or AF for short, in public preview, and that is where we are today. So what is it and how does it differ from the different things here? So just to have a better understanding of the different offerings, Microsoft Extensions AI is this low-level thing. It can do chat clients with responses, streaming responses, and tool calls and structured output. And it can do generating vectors. But beyond that, it can't really do anything. But the genius part about Microsoft Extensions AI is that it has the extension methods to the core LLM libs on NuGet packages. So you new up a Azure OpenAI client and turn it into a Microsoft Extension chat client. You new up normal OpenAI and you do the same and so on. So the extension methods is the brilliant part here. Semantic kernel can do the same as Extensions AI as I've shown in a previous video, but it has a lot of baggage now because it cannot just switch to this and not break everything. So it has its own fundamentals, like its kernel, like all its connectors. It can't just use the extension methods. It has a connector for Azure OpenAI, Gemini, and so on. It has its own set of objects for function calling, for all kinds of things. And then it owns Microsoft Extension Vector Data, which it will still do, but more of that later. But beyond what we can do over here, it can also do agent framework. So agent framework is a little like a chat completion, just with a bit more in there. Like, for example, giving upfront instructions and telling what things it can call tool calling wise. And it supported standalone agents. It supported the AI Foundry agents. It supported the Bedrock agents. And it supported the two OpenAI agents, the assistant agent and the responses agent. So whenever you needed to do these kinds of things, that was the main reason you went to semantic kernel. Or if you wanted to use their process framework, which is an AI workflow. But now we have semantic or Microsoft Agent Framework, and this is more or less a 2.0 of semantic kernel with breaking changes. And for good reason, because we have thrown away all the fundamental code that we don't need and just taken the dependency of Microsoft Extensions AI, which will provide all the different core models. And we have thrown away chat completion as such, because If you just want chat completion, you just use extensions AI chat completion, because it will be, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel there. But we would still want the workflows. I will make separate video about the workflows. They were previously called process framework. Now they're just called workflows. But the main part, of course, in a Microsoft Agent Framework is the agents. And they are more or less an extended version of what was in semantic kernel, but be called AI agents instead of the various names semantic kernel had. But they can do the same. They can still do responses. They can do streaming responses. They can do tool calling, structured output, and instructions. And then there's extra agent supported. So we get a Copilot Studio agent, we get A2A card agents, and we get Onyx and Ollama agents as a chat client agent by itself. We are losing Bedrock agents for now, at least. This is still early days, so it might come in again. But right now, this Microsoft Agent Framework are primarily focusing on the Microsoft Azure and on OpenAI. You can still use Gemini and such because Microsoft Extensions AI support that, but beyond that, it is mostly aiming at the Microsoft features. So let's see some code examples. A simple agent over here in semantic kernel. You made your kernel and hooked up Azure or OpenAI. You made your agents, and then you used an await for each in order to invoke, or await for each down here for streaming invoke. Same thing in Azure Microsoft Agent Framework. You now instead, a little like you do in Microsoft Extensions AI, you just new up the type of client you wish to have, and then you get your tool, in this case the chat client, but then you say just create AI agents. That's a little the same as this, so you can just chain the agent in, where you give the name and the instructions, just like we do here, and then we have an AI agent instead. And with an AI agent, we primarily have a run async and a run streaming async. Of course, with all the normal inputs that especially Microsoft Extensions AI have for thinking models, temperatures, if you run non-thinking, and so on. But we just get a result back, so we don't need to await for each, which was kind of funky in the past. So with non-streaming, it is that simple to work with now. Of course, this is not just text, it's all the things with usage and everything. And all the behind the scene models are the Microsoft Extensions AI models. So there's no reinventing of the wheel here or duplicating things. So that's good. Same for tool calling. Tool calling have become incredibly simple, or function calling as we called them before. In the past, we needed this kernel function on stuff. This is not needed anymore in AF, but we just need to write some kind of static method that can do some tool calling, and then in semantic kernel we did it the normal way. We made it an agent, and we set function choice behavior in order to allow the agent to use the tools. Then we imported the tool, and then we could use the thing. Now it has been been streamlined in that whenever you make the agent, you just tell which tools it are allowed to use with this AI function factory. And if you do that, to auto function calling is automatically activated. You don't need to set any extra settings or anything. So you just simply call run async, and then you get your result. So way fewer lines of code compared to the old style. In general, you will see this whenever you try it out. you will find that it is incredibly better at being much more concise and dense, and the XML summaries of everything is really, really good as well. Structured output is where it's lacking a bit, in my opinion. In the old system, or Extension AI, which was even better, there we can just go in and say we need a response format type of something of our object. That doesn't exist anymore. We need to do a chat response format for JSON schema with various settings. And then we get our data back where we can deserialize it into a tool. But it has some early startup problems. So, for example, it can't really work really good with enums, but that's probably why it's a public preview. I hope that they end up using it the same way as Microsoft Extension AI, where you can actually, when you call run async here or get response async in Microsoft Extension AI, you can give in an object, and that object will come back as the response, which is really, really handy. But let's see if they haven't. Right now, it's a bit more funky and a bit more difficult to work with, unfortunately. But it can be done. Other notes and things to know. Well, of course, the agent framework just releasing in preview is in preview. The team have mentioned that they're probably around for at least 3 months in preview before it goes GA. And also, one thing that is missing on purpose is that the vector store connectors have not been moved over to agent framework. So the story about the vector stores is that there's a Microsoft Extensions vector data, just like Microsoft Extensions AI. But the odd thing is that is being hosted by the semantic kernel repo, because they were the ones needing it. At some point that will be moved, and but all the implementations of that is in the semantic kernel namespace. And given that it's an agent framework, it doesn't really make sense to move over vector stores. So for now, they're staying in the semantic kernel repo, and you can just use them in agent framework without any problems, because they don't really have any dependencies. They just have an odd home in terms of being in the semantic kernel repo and having the semantic kernel as namespace. But beyond that, it has nothing to do with the AI of semantic kernel at all. They talked about it. They might want to rebrand it at some point with a new namespace, a new repo, and stuff. But for now, they're just keeping it there. And so don't be alarmed that you still have a semantic kernel dot SQL Server vector store namespace or something like that. That's is not an issue for these setups. So that is the news for today. Hope you find it beneficial, and I will be diving a lot more into this, and I will be beginning to make a lot of retake of this entire series on how to get started with agent framework instead. So all my videos have new versions that are more up to date. So see you in the next one.